I'm 27 years old. I've no money and no prospects. I'm already a burden to my parents. And I'm frightened.
Hello. Ooh, I gotta change the brightness. Hold on. That's a little better. One more. How you guys doing? Welcome back to another Pride and Prejudice read. Hello, hello, hello. Hola. You sound like an orc, Nemo. Good timing. Two dances with the same partner signal serious interest. One cannot introduce himself. Two people have to be introduced by a third. The order of introduction matters. Interesting. That seems so strange. Another point, while women were encouraged to be accomplished, they were not encouraged to be eager to display their talents. Humility and self-deprecating assessment of their own skill. Interesting. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. So this is the Netherfield Ball chapter. All right. Excellent. Go pull my book. What was I going to say? I forgot. Oh, well. Totally forgot what I was going to say. What the heck? Wasn't that important then. I really got to sharpen my pencils. That's what I really got to say. This chapter is wild. Excellent. Good. I'm good. I'm excited for a wild chapter. We need a good wild chapter. Mary being mean next about her piano playing is considered bad manners. Yeah, I mean, yeah. It's kind of bad manners in non-Regency society too. I'm going next. Get out of here. I saw an Ellie Dashwood short that talked about Mrs. Bennet saying a proper woman, in the first chapter, saying a proper woman should put aside her beauty for the sake of her daughters. And she said that is kind of like, that's like a very Regency comment, because the mothers would go to the balls and they were like considered like the hotties. And then when they had daughters that came of age, they were kind of put aside. And a lot of mothers had difficulty in doing that. And there was rivalries between mothers and daughters. That was really fascinating. That was interesting. So I saw a little short on that. I know a bunch of you have been kind of pushing that channel. I'm excited to kind of watch some of her videos when I finish Pride and Prejudice. Still trying to figure out what book to read next. I'm bouncing between Sense and Sensibility or some other Austen work, or Jane Eyre, or Moby Dick. I think those are the three that I'm kind of toying around with right now. Trying to figure out which to do next. I kind of don't want to do all Jane Austen at once. I kind of want to like space that out for the rest of my life. So I get enjoyment from that for the rest of my life. But I'm kind of tempted to do all Jane Austen at once. Just like do a year of Jane Austen or something. But I don't know. Mothers had to introduce their daughters to a ball. Do the Iliad, and I'd understand Eowyn even more. Yeah, I'm definitely going to do the Iliad before summer. That's going to be in there. If I do Moby Dick, I'd probably have to do the Iliad right after, because Moby Dick is a long one. That would take a while. So maybe I'll do like, I don't know. We'll figure it out. Anyway, we're going to just jump into the read, because I'm kind of excited to read. And I have a whole nother essay about Eowyn being a feminist that I just wrote last night. It's a long one. It's 8 pages single space. It's like about a half an hour of talking. And I got to record that. But I'm really excited about that essay. I feel like last night, maybe the Odyssey movie's coming out. I gotta do both. Maybe I'll do do I have to have one before the other? Are they both, do they come sequentially at all? I'm glad you think the last one was good. I think the next one, I think tomorrow is going to be even better. I think I was touching on a few points that I was going to touch on tomorrow. But tomorrow's, well, I'm going to go record right after this, feels better to me. It's like how I think Eowyn is really like the ultimate feminist character. Because she makes a choice herself. She comes to these realizations herself. She don't need no man. She wasn't tamed by Faramir. She came to this realization on her own. But I'll save that for tomorrow. Prologue for Canterbury Tales. I'll probably we'll end up reading the entirety of the Canterbury Tales. I remember I read that in high school. We had to do like each different part. I don't remember a thing about it because I wasn't a big reader in high school. Definitely spoiled about the fate of some heroes, the Iliad and the Odyssey. Interesting. Okay, I'm sure those will probably go over my head, but maybe I'll start with the Iliad first. The Master and Margarita. Who by? Are those two different books, or is that one book? The Master and Margarita, or The Master and Margarita? Ooh, some T.S. Eliot, Murder in the Cathedral. I like his poetry. Haven't read any of his non-poetry, his fiction. Not the biggest fan of T.S. Eliot's poetry, to be honest. I mean, everyone praises it to be like the greatest poetry of all time. He is a little annoying to me. I mean, he's brilliant, but a little annoying. Hold on, let me adjust the camera with my foot. Perfect. Now we're cooking. All right, everyone, we're going to just get into this ball because apparently chapter 18 starts the ball. We're going to do 18, 20, and 21. Wait, 18, 19, and 20, sorry. We're going to do 18, 19, and 20. It's about 20 pages. Maybe get to 21, because 21 is not that long of a chapter. Actually, yeah, we'll see. Yes, Nemo, exactly. That's what I was saying in the essay. I'm excited for that one. I'm excited to see what other people think about that one. Anywho, let's read. Who's your guys' favorite poet? That's the question. I think Edna St. Vincent Millay or Mary Oliver are probably maybe my two favorite modern ones. A little older. I don't know. I don't know. William Carlos William, because he lived next door to me. Gerard Manley Hopkins. He's written some good stuff. William Carlos William, I don't like his poetry, but he lived next door to me, the town next door to me. So I really like the movie Patterson because it's kind of about him. It's a great little movie. He was a great little poet, but I don't really like that much of his poetry. Anyway, chapter 18. Here we go. Welcome all newbies. Everyone make sure you like the video. Get this out to more Pride and Prejudice people, more classics people. And I've not met William Carlos William. I think he's dead. He's definitely dead. But he's from the town next door to me. Anywho, alrighty. This is chapter 18. When did he die? That's the question. Well, let me figure out when he died, and then we'll start the read. Here we go. All right, everyone, like the video. Make sure you like the video, and we're gonna get into reading chapter 18 of Pride and Prejudice. Let's go. Till Elizabeth entered the drawing room at Netherfield and looked in vain for Mr. Wickham among the cluster of redcoats there assembled. A doubt of his being present had never occurred to her. Oh, is he not going to be at the ball? Uh-oh. Well, that's good, but uh-oh. The certainty of meeting him had not been checked by any of those recollections that might not unreasonably have alarmed her. She had dressed with more than casual care, and prepared in the highest spirits for the conquest of all that remained unsubdued in his heart, or unsubdued of his heart, trusting that it was not more than might be won in the course of the evening. But in an instant arose the dreadful suspicion of his being purposely omitted for Mr. Darcy's pleasure in the Bingleys' invitation to the officers. And though this was not exactly the case, the absolute fact of his absence was pronounced by his friend Mr. Denny, to whom Lydia eagerly applied, and who told them that Wickham had obliged to go to town on business the day before, and was not yet returned, adding with a significant smile, I do not imagine his business would have called him away just now, if he had not wished to avoid a certain gentleman here. Huh, interesting. Okay. This part of his intelligence, though unheard by Lydia, was caught by Elizabeth, and it assured her that Darcy was not less answerable for Wickham's absence than if her first surmise had been just. Every feeling of displeasure against the former was so sharpened by immediate disappointment that she could hardly reply with tolerable civility to make polite inquiries, which he directly afterwards approached to make. Attention, forbearance, patience with Darcy was injury to Wickham. She was resolved against any sort of conversation with him, and turned away with a degree of ill humor which she could not wholly surmount even in speaking to Mr. Bingley, whose blind partiality provoked her. Whoa, Elizabeth is going into this hot. Elizabeth is pissed off. She is going to do something real nasty to Darcy in this. That's my guess. But Elizabeth was not formed for ill humor, and thought every prospect of her own was destroyed for the evening. It could not dwell long on her spirits. And having told all her griefs to Charlotte Lucas, whom she had not seen for a week, she was soon able to make a voluntary transition to the oddities of her cousin. And to point him out to her particular notice. The two first dances, however, brought a return of distress. They were dances of mortification. Is that a kind of dance? Dances of mortification? What is that? Is that just like because she's dancing with a priest? She has to confess her sins. Mr. Collins, awkward and solemn, apologizing instead of attending. There you go. And often moving wrong without being aware of it, gave her all the shame and misery which a disagreeable partner for a couple of dances can give. The moment of her release from him was ecstasy. That's a long time to dance with someone who doesn't really know how to dance. She danced next with an officer who had the refreshment of talking of Wickham, and of hearing that he was universally liked. So he's schmoozing the whole entire crowd, the whole entire troupe. When those dances were over, she returned to Charlotte Lucas and was in conversation with her, when she found herself suddenly addressed by Mr. Darcy, who took her so much by surprise in his application for her hand that without knowing what she did, she accepted him. Wait a second. Oh boy. This is gonna be a maelstrom. He walked away again immediately, and she was left to fret over her own want of presence of mind. Charlotte tried to console her. I dare say you will find him very agreeable. Heaven forbid. That would be the greatest misfortune of all. To find a man agreeable whom one is determined to hate. Do not wish such an evil. Do not wish me such an evil. That is so interesting. She's confessing that she's just determined to hate this guy. That would be the greatest misfortune of all. To find a man agreeable whom one is determined to hate. I hate to break it to you, Elizabeth, but your whole entire misfortune is going to be probably the central plot of this book. This is going to be the greatest misfortune of all. Pride and Prejudice, a.k.a. the greatest misfortune of all. That should have been what she titled this book. Instead of Pride and Prejudice, instead of First Impressions, the greatest misfortune of all. Honestly, that's kind of a banger of a title. When the dancing recommends, however, and Darcy approached to claim her hand, Charlotte could not help cautioning her in a whisper not to be a simpleton and allow her fancy for Wickham to make her appear unpleasant in the eyes of a man 10 times his consequence. Dang. Charlotte knows what she's talking about. So Darcy is 10 times more important than Wickham. Elizabeth made no answer and took her place in the set, amazed at the dignity to which she was arrived in being allowed to stand opposite to Mr. Darcy, and reading in her neighbor's looks their equal amazement in beholding it. They stood for some time without speaking a word, and she began to imagine that their silence was to last through the 2 dances. And at first she was resolved not to break it, till suddenly, fancying that it would be the greater punishment to her partner to oblige him to talk, she made some slight observation on the dance. He replied, and was again silent. After a pause of some minutes, she addressed him a second time. She just can't stop. It is your turn to say something now, Mr. Darcy. I talked about the dance, and you ought to make some kind of remark on the size of the room or the number of couples. He smiled and assured her that whatever she wished him to say should be said. Very well. That reply will do for the present. That is a perfect response for Elizabeth. That's actually so cute. I wish she could just see this, because Elizabeth, if she didn't hate Darcy with everything in her and wasn't determined to hate it, she would cackle at that response. She would love that response. Very well. That reply will do for the present. Perhaps by and by I may observe that private balls are much pleasanter than public ones. But now we may be silent. Do you talk by rule then, while you are dancing? Sometimes. One must speak a little, you know. It would look odd to be entirely solemn for half an hour together. Ooh, so half an hour is a set or a dance? And yet for the advantage of some, conversation ought to be so arranged as that they may have the trouble of saying as little as possible. Are you consulting your own feelings in the present case? Or do you imagine that you are gratifying mine? Both, replied Elizabeth archly. For I have always seen a great similarity in the turn of our minds. We are each of an unsocial, taciturn disposition, unwilling to speak unless we expect to say something that will amaze the whole room, and be handed down to posterity with all the éclat of a proverb. I don't know that word. Are you consulting your own feelings in the present case, or do you imagine that you are gratifying mine? He's being very, he's being aware. This is no very striking resemblance of your own character, I am sure, said he. How near it may be to mine, I cannot pretend to say. You think it a faithful portrait, undoubtedly. Wait 1 second. Do you talk then by rule while you are dancing? Sometimes one must speak a little, you know. It would look odd to be entirely silent for half an hour together, and yet the advantage of some conversation ought to be so arranged as that they may have the trouble of saying as little as possible. Are you consulting your own feelings in the present case, or do you imagine that you are gratifying mine? What is that? What are they saying there? What am I missing here? And yet the advantage of some conversation ought to be so arranged as that they may have the trouble of saying as little as possible. Yeah, no, he doesn't really know how much Lizzie hates him. That's very, very valid. But like, he's trying to flirt with her. She's kind of giving it back, but at the same time not. People who don't want to talk should have rules so they can say the bare minimum. Are you consulting your own feelings in the present case, or do you imagine that you are gratifying mine? Both, replied Elizabeth, for I have always seen a great similarity in the turn of our minds. We are each of an unsocial, taciturn disposition, unwilling to speak unless we expect to say something that will amaze the whole room, and be handed down to posterity with all the eclat of a proverb. This is no very striking resemblance of your own character, I am sure, said he. How near it may be to mine, I cannot pretend to say. You think it a faithful portrait, undoubtedly. I must not decide on my own performance. He made no answer, and they were again silent till they had gone down the dance. When he asked her if she and her sisters did not very often walk to Meryton, she answered in the affirmative, and, unable to resist the temptation, added, When you met us there the other day, we had just been forming a new acquaintance. Oh, dear. Oh, boy. Wait. He's asking if she thinks he doesn't want... He's asking if she thinks he doesn't want to speak with her. That's so confusing to me. Is that how you want it to be, or do you think that's how I want it? Okay. Carol, that makes sense. It also seems like he's poking fun at her, saying that like we're the same. We both speak like that. And then she confirms that, and then he's like, "Oh, well, actually, it's not necessarily the case with me." Well, maybe. The effect was immediate. A deeper shade of hauteur spread over his features, but he said not a word, and Elizabeth, though blaming herself for her own weakness, could not go on. At length, Darcy spoke, and in a constrained manner. Mr. Wickham is blessed with such happy manners as may ensure his making friends. Whether he may be equally capable of retaining them is less certain. Interesting. He has been so unlucky as to lose your friendship, replied Elizabeth with emphasis, and in a manner which he is likely to suffer from all his life. Darcy made no answer, and seemed desirous of changing the subject. At that moment, Sir William Lucas appeared close to them, meaning to pass through the set to the other side of a room, but on perceiving Mr. Darcy, he stopped with a bow of superior courtesy to compliment him on his dancing and his partner. This is so interesting. Because he's unwilling to talk negatively about him, which he kind of did to some extent. He's like, he's not going to really be able to retain his friends. And then she wants to keep talking, and he's like, I just want to change the subject. Let's see if that holds up. I have a feeling that he's not going to really want to say anything else about Wickham. He's probably just going to be cold about it and just try to change the subject. He doesn't abide by the gossip. I have been most highly gratified indeed, my dear sir. Such very superior dancing is not often seen. It is evident that you belong to the first circles. Allow me to say, however, that your fair partner does not disgrace you, and that I must hope to have this pleasure often repeated, especially when a certain desirable event, my dear Eliza, glancing at her sisters in Bingley. Shall take place. That a certain event, my dear Eliza, shall take place. What congratulations will then flow in? I appeal to Mr. Darcy. But let me not interrupt you, sir. You will not thank me for detaining you from the bewitching converse of that young lady, whose bright eyes are also upbraiding me. Wait, I have been most highly gratified indeed, my dear sir. Such very superior dancing is not often seen. It is evident that you belong to the first circles. Allow me to say, however, that your fair partner does not disgrace you, that I must hope to have this pleasure often repeated. Especially when a certain desirable event, my dear Eliza. Wait, what is he saying here? I must hope to have this pleasure often repeated of watching them dance, especially when a certain desirable event, my dear Eliza, shall take place. What congratulations will then flow in? I appeal to Mr. Darcy, but let me not interrupt you, sir. You will not thank me for detaining you from the bewitching converse of that young lady, whose bright eyes are also upbraiding me. Oh, yeah, I figured it was that, but I was like, they didn't just get married right there, right? That's a little embarrassing that he's saying that. For a second there, I thought he was going to be essentially sent by Charlotte Lucas to go rescue Darcy, or to go rescue Elizabeth. I don't think that's the case necessarily. I think he's just maybe like a little of a bimbo. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know about him. You look cute together. You make a match set with Jane and Bingley. Oops, Lizzie's glaring at me. Gotta go. That is a wild thing to say to someone. They have known each other for what, a week? Like a week of being sick? And he's like, oh, they're definitely going to get married. Dad, shut up. The latter part of this address was scarcely heard by Darcy, but Sir William's allusion to his friends seemed to strike him forcibly, and his eyes were directed with a very serious expression toward Bingley and Jane, who were dancing together. Recovering himself, however, shortly he turned to his partner and said, Sir William's interruption has made me forget what we were talking of. I do not think we were speaking at all. Sir William could not have interrupted any two people in the room who had less to say for themselves. We have tried 2 or 3 subjects already without success. And what are we to talk of next? I cannot imagine. What thinks you of books? He said, smiling. That's the best. That is the best. What a great conversation. What an introvert. He just wants to be with his books. Books? Oh no, I am sure we never read the same. Or not with the same feelings. I am sorry you think so. But if that may be the case, there can at least be no want of subject. We may compare our different opinions. No, I cannot talk of books in a ballroom. My head is always full of something else. The present always occupies you in search of scenes, does it? Said he, with a look of doubt. Yes, always, she replied, without knowing what she said. For her thoughts had wandered far from the subject, as soon afterward appeared by her suddenly exclaiming, I remember hearing you once say, Mr. Darcy, that you hardly ever forgave, that your resentment, once created, was unappeasable. You are very cautious, I suppose, as to its being created. Lizzie, come on. I remember hearing you once say, Mr. Darcy, that you hardly ever forgave. Your resentments, once created, was unappeasable. You were very cautious, I suppose, as to its being created. I am, he said with a firm voice. And never allow yourself to be blinded by prejudice. That is crazy. This is crazy. Although this is so interesting too, because he is revealing his character so well. She's like, you say that you don't ever forgive. So you're cautious when you start to form that opinion, right? He's like, yeah, for sure. You never allow yourself to be blinded by prejudice? Lizzie, when you're pointing the finger, there's 3 more fingers pointing back at you. Come on. That's actually hilarious that she says that. I hope not. It is particularly incumbent on those who never change their opinion to be secure of judging properly at first. May I ask to what these questions tend? Merely to the illustration of your character, she said, endeavoring to shake off her gravity. I am trying to make it out. And what is your success? She shook her head. I do not get on at all. I hear such different accounts of you as puzzle me exceedingly. Now that's interesting. I wonder if she actually is puzzled, or if she's just saying that because she doesn't really want to get to know him. She's like a Malinois chewing a toy. He's totally taken with being Wickham's defender. Yep, exactly, for sure. Yeah, Nemo, that's actually hilarious. I can readily believe, he answered he gravely, that report may vary greatly with respect to me, and I could wish, Miss Bennet, that you were not to sketch my character at the present moment, as there is reason to fear that the performance would reflect no credit on either. But if I do not take your likeness now, I may never have another opportunity. That's a cutting thing to say. She's essentially like, this is your only chance. I would by no means suspend any pleasure of yours, he coldly replied. I understand his feelings here. I understand his coldness. He has trust issues. Like, he has people speaking bad about him and gossiping about him because he has bad people doing it, and then they're going and getting other people's good stuff. So when those people who have heard the gossip come back to him and ask him to confirm it, he just shuts down. I would by no means suspend any pleasure of yours, he coldly replied. She said no more, and they went down the other dance and parted in silence, on each side dissatisfied, though not to an equal degree, for in Darcy's breast there was a tolerable, powerful feeling toward her, which soon procured her pardon, and directed all his anger against another. Is this a murder story? They had not long separated when Miss Bingley came toward her, and with an expression of civil disdain thus accosted her. So Jane's coming toward her. Wait. Oh, no. Carolyn Bingley. So, Miss Eliza, I hear you are quite delighted with George Wickham. Your sister has been talking to me about him. Interesting. I'm curious if Carolyn is actually going to be more tolerable now that we have Wickham in the story, and if she's going to start trashing Wickham, and it's going to be all true and accurate. They can't stop a little gossip. I wonder if they're going to hate him. We'll see. Let's read. This is exciting. Your sister has been talking to me about him and asking me 1,000 questions. Wait, which sister? I'm guessing that's Jane, because they don't really talk to any other sister. Jane, what a good sister. Oh my gosh. Between the lines, Jane is double checking to see if Wickham is actually a good person. She's doing it with people who are awful, but this is a great sister move. That is like so in between the lines of like Jane being just a great sister right there. She's asking 1,000 questions. She is more diligent and a better mother to Elizabeth than Mrs. Bennet is to Elizabeth. She's going and she's double checking to see if, all the sources are right, if the guy that she has a crush on is actually good. Yeah, Lizzie is refusing to hear anything that she says. So she's going to totally ignore this. And I find that the young man forgot to tell you, among his other communications, that he was the son of old Wickham, the late Mr. Darcy's steward. Let me recommend you, however, as a friend, not to give implicit confidence to all his assertions. For as to Mr. Darcy's using him ill, it is perfectly false. For, on the contrary, he has always been remarkably kind to him, though George Wickham has treated Mr. Darcy in a most infamous manner. I do not know the particulars, but I know very well that Mr. Darcy is not in the least to blame, that he cannot bear to hear George Wickham mentioned, and that though my brother thought he could not excessively well avoid including him in his invitation to the officers, he was excessively glad to find out that he had taken himself out of the way. His coming into the country at all is a most insolent thing indeed. I wonder how he could presume to do it. I pity you, Miss Eliza, for this discovery of your favourite's guilt. But really, considering his descent, one could not expect much better. This is... What? Huh? Okay, thoughts. Carolyn actually cares for Elizabeth and Darcy. Why would she be telling Elizabeth this? Other than the fact that maybe she's just a massive gossip, what's her motivation in saying this? Maybe to just get Jane off of her back? But if I'm in her place and I'm talking to Jane right now. I'm going to be Carolyn. I'm talking to Jane. All the meanwhile I'm talking to Jane, I'm looking over at the dance floor and I'm seeing Elizabeth and Darcy dance. And they're not having the greatest time. I could probably tell that because, I'm socially aware enough to see that. But I myself have a massive crush on Darcy, and I want Darcy bad. I want to marry Darcy. And so I then go to Elizabeth and say, hey, look, you have a crush on Wickham. Don't do it. It's not good. It is more so the Darcy reputation. That's a really good point. But it's interesting that she can't help herself from talking about it. This seems like a dumb move then. Maybe that is the class distinction too. But it's interesting. She's trying to paint Darcy as more favorable. Maybe it's just for her own justification. She wants to outwardly say this to someone. She doesn't want someone to think bad of her love. Darcy. Okay. But it does make me like Carolyn a little bit more. Yeah, Wickham sucks so much you wouldn't wish him on your worst enemy. Honestly, valid. That's so interesting. Okay. His guilt and his dissent appear by your accounts to be the same, said Elizabeth angrily. For I've heard you accuse him of nothing worse than of being the son of Mr. Darcy's steward, and of that I can assure you. He informed me himself. I beg your pardon, replied Miss Bingley, turning away with a sneer. Excuse my interference. It was kindly meant. Do I like Miss Bingley now? Do I kind of like Carolyn? Insolent girl, said Elizabeth to herself. You are very much mistaken if you expect to influence me by such a paltry attack as this. I see nothing in it but your own willful ignorance of the malice of Mr. Darcy. She then sought her eldest sister, who had undertaken to make inquiries on the same subject of Bingley. Who had undertaken to make inquiries on the same subject of Bingley? Mr. Bingley? Inquiries on the same subject of Bingley? Is Jane now asking what other people think about Bingley? Oh, she's asking Bingley about Wickham. Oh, of Bingley. Okay. Okay, that makes sense. Jane met her with a smile of such sweet complacency, a glow of such happy expression, as sufficiently marked how well she was satisfied with the occurrences of the evening. Oh, Jane is the best. I love Jane. Elizabeth instantly read her feelings, and at the moment, solicitude for Wickham, resentment against his enemies, and everything else gave way before the hopes of Jane's being in the fairest way for happiness. I want to know, she said, with a countenance no less smiling than her sister's, what you have learnt about Mr. Wickham. But perhaps you have been too pleasantly engaged to think of any third person, in which case you may be sure of my pardon. No, replied Jane, I have not forgotten him. But I have nothing satisfactory to tell you. Mr. Bingley does not know the whole of his history, and is quite ignorant of the circumstances which have principally offended Mr. Darcy. But he will vouch for the good conduct, the probity and honor of his friend. He is perfectly convinced that Mr. Wickham has deserved much less attention from Mr. Darcy than he has received. And I am sorry to say that, by his account as well as his sister's, Mr. Wickham is by no means a respectable young man. I am afraid he has been very imprudent, and has deserved to lose Mr. Darcy's regard. Jane is great. Jane is such a good mother to Elizabeth. Good older sister. This is fantastic. Mr. Bingley does not know Mr. Wickham himself. Question. No, he never saw him till the other morning at Meryton. This account, then, is what he has received from Mr. Darcy. I am perfectly satisfied. But what does he think? Well, what does he say of the living? He does not exactly recollect the circumstances, though he has heard them from Mr. Darcy more than once. But he believes that it was left to him conditionally only. I have not a doubt of Mr. Bingley's sincerity, said Elizabeth warmly. But you must excuse my not being convinced by assurances only. Mr. Bingley's defense of his friend was a very able one, I dare say, but since he is unacquainted with several parts of the story and has learnt the rest from that friend himself, I shall venture still to think of both gentlemen as I did before. Man. There's another point in this. There's another point in this when I think this is like a hard, I guess this is a hard read between the lines, and you could interpret this situation a bunch of different ways. But if someone comes into the town, this beef between Darcy and Wickham, you know Wickham's side of the story. You know everything about his side of the story. And for Darcy to not be telling his, I think it has one of two options, which I think Elizabeth is just falling prey to one of them. Either Wickham is lying and Darcy is just a respectable man and does not wish to gossip and further besmirch him, I guess, or like further make his case fall because like, okay, so he, you know, whatever he did that, he fell from grace and he's in the military. Darcy seems like he doesn't want to like add fuel to the fire. Like he's in the military, good for him. He can harm other people that he wants. He's kind of just like, whatever, let it go. Go ahead and do your thing. Or this is true and Darcy really is like that rotten and evil and he just doesn't want to talk about it because he's embarrassed of it. And I think Lizzie is interpreting it as that. Yeah, and she's defending him in like a stupid way. You know him once. He told you a story filled with all sorts of lies, with gaslighting, with like these niceties. And then all of a sudden you think that you know this guy and you're defending him to his death. Which I guess sometimes we do when we're smitten with someone. So like, who among us hasn't done something like that? Or option 3, read and find out. Okay, interesting. I mean, like, who among us hasn't like had a crush and defended that crush the second we meet them to the people that we love, and the people are like, no, this person's not a good person. You're like, I would die for them. I would die for Riley. Instant ban. Yeah, the Fitz Luna, I feel like that's kind of the case. Darcy stooping to gossip would be inappropriate, which is why I like him even more. He's a man to me. That's a great point, too. She hasn't directly asked him anything. She's been dancing around the subject. I love that little bit in Lord of the Rings when Éowyn and Faramir are talking, and Éowyn's like, speak plainly, dummy. She's like, can you talk to me in plain language? I don't want to talk in riddles. It's a great point. Huh. Yeah, Lizzie is a bit annoying here, but I understand. Yeah, it's like a double thing here. Not only is she smitten with Wickham, she hates and wants to hate Darcy. So it's like a double thing here. She's really fallen into Pride and Prejudice. Read and find out and get EIB? Get a ban? Get instant ban. Yeah, the silence, I guess, is suspicious, but to me, the silence is honorable. Like that, this happens to me in normal life too. If I see a bunch of people participating in gossip and I see one person not doing it, I think better of that one person who is. Like to me, gossip instantly means that not those people are less honorable, but like, you know, if they're just chatting, but like I guess there's a certain level of gossip where it's gotten to in this point where I go, I don't trust anybody who's gossiping. I trust the person who's silent and who's not doing that. Elizabeth is the first one who challenges him for his words. Interesting. I still feel like she's kind of smitten with Wickham. Right? And she is righteously indignant, but she has been waiting. She's been thrilled to dance with this guy for a week. And she hasn't had a chance to because he's not there. Darcy stung her pride by snubbing her at first. Yeah, for sure. All came to that one moment. First impressions. I just wish Lizzie would just open her eyes a little bit. Because they have a great thing going. Their little flirtation in the beginning was, well, like, Lizzie would love that. I think that's like playing into Lizzie's stuff. They can, when they are, if they're like together, they would go to balls and they would dance and they would just sit and make fun of everyone. And they'd be hilarious. They would have such a good time. Well, I think there's a difference between gossip, between like chatting, like when Jane and Elizabeth are having like a down low on, you know, what happened with Wickham and everything. That's not necessarily gossip to me, but like I think there's like I don't know what the difference is between just chatter and between like just a bunch of people gossiping. I mean, I kind of maybe say gossip is more of a blanket term, but still, I think it's just harmful in most cases. Bride and Prejudice, he's actually but plausible. Now that's interesting. I feel like for adaptations, he really has to be plausible for this to be good. Oh, it's kind of flurrying out right now. That's kind of lovely. Are we supposed to get snow today? I didn't even know that. Hold on 1 second. Let me check the weather. Checking the weather. Oh, we're supposed to get snow for the next 2 hours. Lovely. That's kind of nice. All right, let's keep reading. She then changed the discourse to one more gratifying to each, and on which there could be no difference of sentiment. Elizabeth listened with delight to the happy, though modest hopes which Jane entertained of Bingley's regard, and said all in her power to heighten her confidence in it. Aw, that's cute. On their being joined by Mr. Bingley himself, Elizabeth withdrew to Miss Lucas, whose enquiry after the pleasantness of her last partner she had scarcely replied, before Mr. Collins came up to them and told her with great exultation that he had been so fortunate as to make a most important discovery. I have found out, said he, by a singular accident, that there is now a room near relation of my patroness. I happened to overhear the gentleman himself mentioning to the young lady who does the honors of this house the names of Miss de Burgh and of her mother, Lady Catherine. How wonderfully these sort of things can occur. Who would have thought that my meeting with, perhaps, a nephew of Lady Catherine de Burgh in this assembly? That's Darcy. I am most thankful that the discovery is made in time for me to pay my respects to him, which I am now going to do, and trust he will excuse my not having done it before. My total ignorance of the connection must plead my apology. You are not going to introduce yourself to Mr. Darcy. Indeed I am. I shall entreat his pardon for not having done it earlier. I believe him to be Lady Catherine's nephew. It will be in my power to assure him that her ladyship was quite well yesterday se'night. SE''NNIGTH or INIGHT. Here comes obsequiousness. A week ago. Okay, interesting. Elizabeth tried hard to dissuade him from such a scheme, assuring him that Mr. Darcy would consider his addressing with him without introduction as an impertinent freedom. Oh, this is what you guys were saying earlier, that there needs to be an introduction of 3 people. Rather than a compliment to his aunt. That it was not in the least necessary there should be any notice on either side, and that if there were, it must belong to Mr. Darcy, the superior, in consequence, to begin the acquaintance. Mr. Collins listened to her with a determined air of following his own inclination, and when she ceased speaking, replied thus. Whew, that sneeze has been building up for the last 10 minutes. One did not introduce themselves. Mr. Collins, please no. Don't do it, you idiot. He is the kind of person who would just kind of completely forget about that. And he's like, I'm going to go introduce myself to Mr. Darcy. Which I kind of like and respect about that. I feel like that's kind of cool. Forget stupid societal things like that. Just go introduce yourself. Go be nice. My dear Miss Elizabeth. When she ceased speaking, replied thus. Mr. Collins responds, My dear Miss Elizabeth, I have the highest opinion in the world of your excellent judgment in all matters within the scope of your understanding. But permit me to say that there must be a wide difference between the established forms of ceremony amongst the laity and those which regulate the clergy. For give me leave to observe that I consider the clerical office as equal in point of dignity with the highest rank in the kingdom, provided that a proper humility of behavior is at the same time maintained. You must therefore allow me to follow the dictates of my conscience on this occasion, which lead me to perform what I look on as a point of duty. Pardon me for neglecting to profit by your advice, which on every other subject shall be my constant guide. Hold on. Hold on. That is actually hilarious because I think he's thinking in the future that they're going to get married, and so he's thinking your advice will be my constant guide in life. Though in the case before us, I consider myself more fitted by education and habitual study to decide on what is right than a young lady like yourself. It's so demeaning, but it's also so there's he's just an annoying character because there's politenesses wrapped up in the demeaning language that he uses. He is so overly polite that it's so demeaning. And he just kind of disguises up his nastiness. And with a bow, he left her to attack Mr. Darcy. Oh, he's going to attack Mr. Darcy, whose reception of his advances she eagerly watched, and whose astonishment at being so addressed was very evident. Her cousin prefaced his speech with a solemn bow, and though she could not hear a word of it, she felt as if hearing it all, and saw in the motion of his lips the word apology, Hunsford, and Lady Catherine de Bourgh. It vexed her to see him expose himself to such a man. Mr. Darcy was eyeing him with unrestrained wonder, and when at last Mr. Collins allowed him time to speak, replied with an air of distant civility. Mr. Collins, however, was not discouraged from speaking again, and Mr. Darcy's contempt seemed abundantly increased with the length of his second speech. And at the end of it, only made him a slight bow and moved another way. Mr. Collins then returned to Elizabeth. Mr. Collins is going to come back to Elizabeth and go like, "Oh, I had a great meeting with Darcy," and he's not reading the room. This is great. Lizzie can read lips. Yeah. Carol, that's for sure. That's true. Yeah, he's being stupid here in that he's saying, "Oh, I know more than you about society." He's talking to someone who is like literally the person who knows, like a 20-year-old girl knows society better than anybody else in the world. Like they are on the cusp of society right there. So he's an idiot by saying that. "I have no reason, I assure you," said he, "to be dissatisfied with my reception. Mr. Darcy seemed much pleased with the attention. He answered me with the utmost civility, and he even paid me the compliment of saying that he was so well convinced of Lady Catherine's discernment as to be certain she can never bestow a favor unworthily. It was really a very handsome thought. Upon the whole, I am much pleased with him." This is hilarious because all of this is just contributing to Lizzie's deeper hatred of him. Because if Mr. Collins now likes him, Lizzie can say, "I hate him even more." Everything is helping Elizabeth hate Darcy. Everything's up against Darcy right now. I feel bad for him, actually. As Elizabeth had no longer any interest of her own to pursue, she turned her attention almost entirely on her sister and Mr. Bingley, and the train of agreeable reflections which her observations gave birth to made her perhaps almost as happy as Jane. That's quite nice. She saw in her idea settled in that very house in all the felicity which a marriage of true affection could bestow. And she felt capable, under such circumstances, of endeavoring even to like Bingley's two sisters. Her mother's thoughts, she plainly saw, were bent the same way, and she determined not to venture near her, lest she might hear too much. When they sat down to supper, therefore, she considered it a most unlikely perverseness which placed them within one of each other. And deeply she was vexed to find that her mother was talking to that one person, Lady Lucas, freely, openly, and of nothing else but her expectation that Jane would soon be married to Mr. Bingley. It is crazy how fast this stuff moves. Like they've known each other for like 2 weeks. This is their second ball together. They're on a second date, and Mrs. Bennet's like, "Can't wait till they get married." Mom cringe, yeah. It was an animating subject, and Mrs. Bennet seemed incapable of fatigue while enumerating the advantages of the match. His being such a charming young man and so rich. I'm surprised she didn't lead with that. And living but 3 miles from them were the first points of self-congratulations. She's a mother-in-law that wants to be close. This is great. And then it was such a comfort to think how fond the two sisters were of Jane, and to be certain that they must desire the connection as much as she could do. It was, moreover, such a promising thing for her younger daughters, as Jane's marrying so greatly must throw them in a way of other rich men. Oh, gosh. And lastly, it was so pleasant at her time of life to be able to consign her single daughters to the care of their sister, that she might not be obliged to go into company more than she liked. It was necessary to make this circumstance a matter of pleasure, because on such occasions it is etiquette. But no one was less likely than Mrs. Bennet to find comfort in staying at home at any period of her life. She concluded with many good wishes that Lady Lucas might soon be equally fortunate, though evidently and triumphantly believing there was no chance of it. Ugh. Awful. That really makes me not like her. I keep going back and forth with her. I think it's just a downward spiral. It's a downward trajectory. Like every once in a while, I learn her motivation. I'm like, okay, she's a little less bad, but then it just keeps plummeting. That's nasty. I sufficiently hate Mrs. Bennet. In vain did Elizabeth endeavor to check the rapidity of her mother's words, or persuade her to describe her felicity in a less audible whisper. For to her inexpressible vexation, she could perceive that the chief of it was overheard by Mr. Darcy, who sat opposite to them. Her mother only scolded her for being nonsensical. She could perceive that the chief of it was overheard by Mr. Darcy, who sat opposite. Her mother, oh my gosh, she's awful. I also love that Darcy is just there. You know he's just creeping on him. Maybe he asked to get seated there. Mrs. Bennet is insufferable. And this, yeah, there's a point to it. I'm curious what Darcy's reaction is going to be. I don't think Darcy particularly likes Mrs. Bennet, but I'm curious if he's going to just overlook her offenses because of how much he likes Elizabeth and be like, oh, she's okay. Or if he's going to really go down hard on her and be like, no, she's just insufferable and she's terrible. I feel like it's going to be the idea that he's like, oh, whatever. Who cares? She's just a gossipy woman. But she's insufferable. The ball's already spiraling down. Yeah, and she's definitely that one kind of, she's like definitely speaking loud enough that everyone else can hear. She's doing that definitely on purpose. She's like, oh, don't worry. Or she's maybe just a little drunk. Is there drinking at these things? Maybe she's a little drunk. I don't know. Probably wouldn't be very ladylike, but maybe she just let one too many slip. She's just clueless. Yeah, I'm excusing your behavior as drunkenness when really she's just naturally drunk in her life and clueless. What is Mr. Darcy to me, pray, that I should be afraid of him? Yeesh, yikes. I am sure that we owe him no such particular civility as to be obliged to say nothing he may not like to hear. For heaven's sake, madam, speak lower. What advantage can it be to you to offend Mr. Darcy? You will never recommend yourself to his friend by doing so. Huh. Is Elizabeth scared that Darcy is then going to harm their family? Or is she just being nice again and defending Darcy? Or just like saying, shut up, we don't want to offend Darcy. Because I would have thought that Elizabeth right now doesn't care about not offending Darcy. Nothing that she could say, however, had any influence. Her mother would talk of her views in the same intelligible tone. Elizabeth blushed and blushed again, with shame and vexation. She could not help frequently glancing her eye at Mr. Darcy, though every glance convinced her of what she dreaded. For though she was not always looking at her mother, she was convinced that his attention was invariably fixed by her. The expression of his face changed gradually from indignant contempt to a composed and steady gravity. She could not help but frequently glancing her eye at Mr. Darcy, though every glance convinced her of what she dreaded. For though he was not always looking at her mother, she was convinced that his attention was invariably fixed by her. The expression of his face changed gradually from indignant contempt to composed and steady gravity. why does his face change like that? Is he just okay with the fact that she's gossipy? Or his face is changing like that because he just overheard Lizzie say, "What advantage can it be to you to offend Mr. Darcy? You will never recommend yourself to his friend by doing so." So maybe he's like, "Oh, Lizzie half defended me there." And he's just thinking about that. Huh. Interesting. There are layers to this, man. All right, let's keep reading. Let's finish this chapter up. At length, however, Mrs. Bennet had no more to say, and Lady Lucas, who had been long yawning at the reception of delights which she saw no likelihood of sharing, was left to the comforts of cold ham and chicken. Elizabeth now began to revive, but not long was the interval of tranquility. For when supper was over, singing was talked of, and she had the mortification of seeing Mary, after very little entreaty, preparing to oblige the company. By many significant looks and silent entreaties did she endeavor to prevent such a proof of complaisance, but in vain. Mary would not understand them. Such an opportunity of exhibiting was delightful to her, and she began her song. Elizabeth's eyes were fixed on her with most painful sensations, and she watched her progress through the several stanzas with an impatience which was very ill rewarded at their close. For Mary, on receiving almost the thanks of the table, the hint of a hope that she might be prevailed on to favor them again, after the pause of half a minute began another. Mary's powers were by no means fitted for such a display. Her voice was weak and her manner affected. Elizabeth was in agonies. She looked at Jane to see how she bore it, but Jane was very composedly talking to Bingley. She looked at her at his two sisters, but saw them making signs of derision at each other, and at Darcy, who continued, however, impenetrably grave. She looked at her father to entreat his interference, lest Mary should be singing all night. He took the hint, and when Mary had finished her second song, said aloud, "That will do extremely well, child. You have delighted us long enough. Let the other young ladies have time to exhibit." Mary, though pretending not to hear, was somewhat disconcerted, and Elizabeth, sorry for her, and sorry for her father's speech, was afraid her anxiety had done no good. Others of the party were now applied to. "If I," said Mr. Collins, "were so fortunate as to be able to sing, I should have great pleasure, I am sure, in obliging the company with an air. For I consider music at its very innocent diversion and perfectly compatible with the profession of a clergyman." I do not mean, however, to assert that we can be justified in devoting too much of our time to music, for there are certainly other things to attend to. The rector of a parish has much to do. In the first place, he must make such an arrangement for tithes as may be beneficial to himself and not offensive to his patron. He must write his own sermons, and the time that remains will not be too much for his parish duties, and the care and improvement of his dwelling, which he cannot be excused from making as comfortable as possible. He is awful. Ugh. And I do not think it of light importance that he should have attentive and conciliatory manners toward everybody, especially toward those whom he owes his preferment. I cannot acquit him of the duty, nor could I think well of a man who should omit an occasion to testify his respect toward anybody connected with his family. And with a bow to Mr. Darcy, he concluded a speech which had been spoken so loudly as to be heard by half the room. Many stared, many smiled, but no one looked more amused than Mr. Bennet himself. That is actually hilarious. While his wife seriously commended Mr. Collins for having spoken so sensibly, and observed in a half whisper to Lady Lucas that he was remarkably clever. He was a remarkably clever and good kind of man. That is so interesting. So first of all, now Mrs. Bennet is able to whisper. What a dummy. Second, Mr. Collins is an idiot. Can't stand him. And Mrs. Bennet is doing that just so Elizabeth, she's like, he's gonna become a son-in-law soon, so might as well. And I love that Mr. Bennet's just like enjoying this idiot. Darcy is more and more being put off by the Bennet family. Yeah, for sure. His face becomes composed when he's reached a decision and knows what to do next. Interesting. I don't know what that is yet, though. No, everyone's an idiot except Jane. Jane is the only non-idiot here. And Jane and Charlotte. Love Charlotte. Honestly, that's a great point. Mr. Bennet is kind of dumb here. He's just like concerned about his own entertainment. But there is a point too where like, yeah, maybe he's not being a good dad here of like helping his daughters out a little bit. Because he's just more concerned about like his own entertainment to some extent. He seems like he's kind of given up. Yeah, sparring with Darcy and then being humiliated by your family. It's a rough night. There was indoor plumbing. Lizzie to spend the rest of the night in the bathroom. Valid. Yeah, it is a great point. Mr. Bennet isn't doing great here. He's just concerned about entertainment right now, and he's not actually helping the girls or helping his wife out. That's a really great point. Yeah, he does seem resigned as a parent. That's the word I was looking for. That's a really great point. Mr. Bennet's being crummy. But when you've been with Mrs. Bennet for so long, do you blame him? I could see him like whatever about his wife, but he has this whatever attitude toward his daughters too, which feels worse. Like he shouldn't have that toward his daughters. He should really be helping them, working with them. All right, let's finish this chapter. To Elizabeth, it appeared that her family made an agreement to expose themselves as much as they could during the evening. It would have been impossible for them to play their parts with more spirit or finer success. And happy did she think it for Bingley that Bingley and her sister, that some of the exhibition had escaped his notice, and that his feelings were not of a sort to be much distressed by the folly which he must have witnessed. That his two sisters and Mr. Darcy, however, should have an opportunity of ridiculing her relations was bad enough, and she could not determine whether the silent contempt of the gentlemen or the insolent smiles of the ladies were more intolerable. The rest of the evening brought her little amusement. She was teased by Mr. Collins, who continued most perseveringly by her side. And though he could not prevail with her to dance with him again, put it out of her power to dance with others. Yikes. In vain did she entreat him to stand up with somebody else and offer to introduce him to any young lady in the room. He assured her that as to dancing he was perfectly indifferent to it, that his chief object was by delicate attentions to recommend himself to her, and that he should therefore make a point of remaining close to her the whole evening, Oh, what a rough night for Elizabeth. Like, she was an idiot in the beginning, but she didn't really get, like, she doesn't really deserve this. No one deserves Mr. Collins to just sit next to you for the entire time and just go, I'm not going to dance with anybody else. I'm just going to wait patiently for you and just kind of hang out with you. And make sure you don't dance with anybody else or have fun at all. There was no arguing upon such a project. She owed her greatest relief to her friend Miss Lucas, who often joined them, and good-naturedly engaged Mr. Collins' conversation to herself. That's sweet. That's sweet of her. She was at least free from the offense of Mr. Darcy's farther notice, though often standing within very short distance of her. Quite disengaged, he never came near enough to speak. She felt it to be the probable consequence of her allusion to Mr. Wickham, and rejoiced in it. That's a bit hypocritical of her, too. She's okay. She thinks that she's okay with dissing Darcy to his face, but she's not okay when her mother does it. The Longbourn party were the last of all companies to depart, and by a maneuver of Mrs. Bennet, had to wait for their carriages a quarter of an hour after everyone else's was gone, which gave them time to see how heartily they were wished away by some of the family. Mrs. Hurst and her sister scarcely opened their mouths except to complain of fatigue, and were evidently impatient to have the house to themselves. They repulsed every attempt of Mrs. Bennet at conversation, and by doing so threw a languor over the whole party, which was very little relieved by the long speeches of Mr. Collins, who was complimenting Mr. Bingley and his sisters on the elegance of their entertainment and the hospitality and politeness which had marked their behavior to their guests. Darcy said nothing at all. Mr. Bennet, in equal silence, was enjoying the scene. Mr. Bingley and Jane were standing together, a little detached from the rest, and talked only to each other. Elizabeth preserved as steady as a silence as either Mrs. Hurst or Miss Bingley, and even Lydia was too much fatigued to utter more than the occasional exclamation of, "Lord, how tired I am," accompanied by a violent yawn. When at length they arose to take their leave, Mrs. Bennet was most pressingly civil in her hopes of seeing the whole family soon at Longbourn, and addressing herself particularly to Mr. Bingley, to assure him how happy he would make them by eating a family dinner with them at any time, without the ceremony of a formal invitation. Bingley was all grateful pleasure, and he readily engaged for taking the earliest opportunity of waiting on her. After his return from London, whither he was obliged to go the next day for a short time, Mrs. Bennet was perfectly satisfied, and quitted the house under the delightful persuasion that, allowing for the necessary preparations of settlements, new carriages and wedding clothes she should undoubtedly see her daughter settled at Netherfield in the course of 3 or 4 months. Of having another daughter married to Mr. Collins, she thought, with equal certainty, and with considerable though not equal pleasure. Elizabeth was the last dear of all her children. Elizabeth was the least dear to her of all her children. And though the man and the match were quite good enough for her, the worth of each was eclipsed by Mr. Bingley and Netherfield. Aw. They're not good parents. Like, again, Mr. Bennet is just checked out, so he's not speaking. Look, you married a chatty, gossipy woman. There's a point where he needs to defend his daughters and say, "Shut up. Stop talking." not in that way, but there's a point where he just needs to like with tact rein her in. You know? Mary being more loved by their mother than Lizzie. It's crazy. Technically, the mother's responsibility to educate daughters. Father's taking a hand in daughter's education was optional. This isn't necessarily education, though. This is like managing your family's reputation. Like, that's a whole family affair. Like, everyone has to be on the same page, and the parents just aren't. Honestly, Jane's the only one that's really doing that. Jane and Elizabeth are the only two ones that are really doing that. Jane is the mother of this, which is really interesting now because it's actually sad for Jane in this chapter, because this chapter painted Jane as the mother of Elizabeth, and it was cute and playful at the beginning, and I'm like, oh man, this is so fun that she's actually the mother. But now it's more sad because Jane probably has had to learn this from the get-go and has had to learn that my mom is not going to take care of Elizabeth. My mom doesn't care for Elizabeth. And I'm the oldest daughter. I'm 2 years older than Lizzie. That has to fall on me. It's really interesting. Mrs. Bennet didn't change between the elder two and the other. Someone did, and it was definitely Mr. Bennet. What do you mean change? Change for what? Yeah, they are relying on a fortunate marriage. She's making it so that they're just married off and then like she's done with them. You know what I mean? Which doesn't feel great. Doesn't feel great. Yeah, it's like she has a beautiful daughter and she's like, okay, she's like, that's going to get us through. I wouldn't say that Jane and Lizzie don't really care for their younger sisters. I definitely think Jane does. I think Lizzie is just exasperated by them and just finds their inconsistencies funny and embarrassing. They're embarrassed by them. Who isn't embarrassed by their younger sibling? But they still do love them and care about them. I think they're just embarrassed by them. And so it might seem like that, but I think the heart of Jane and Elizabeth are still care and love for their sisters. Whereas for Mrs. Bennet, it's like everything that she's doing is out of her like self-interest. And Mr. Bennet is literally just a selfish man. He's just sitting there hoping that he has more entertainment. He's like so tapped out. He just is like, I just want to laugh at people. And he's able to do that with Elizabeth, but that's almost not that cute anymore. Maybe other people who help Jane and Lizzie turn out better than the younger siblings. Phillips, Mr. and Mrs. Phillips, maybe? Nobody cared to educate Mary, Kitty, or Elizabeth. Mary's the youngest, right? She's a reader. I don't know. I don't know about any of that. Like, that's like maybe reading too much into it for me. So maybe that's going to come up later in the books, their education. But at the moment, I don't know. I don't know if I would say that. Lydia's the youngest. Okay, Mary's the middle. Mary's dead middle. Like, Mary seems like the most educated, but she's like maybe self-made. She's like self-educated. And the other two girls maybe just neglected it. Maybe like the mother was like very diligent in the education, and then all of a sudden when Kitty and Lydia came up, she was just so tired that she didn't really care. And then Mary realized the value of an education, and she's like, I want to keep doing this. So she just read and applied herself. And then she just kind of fell off. Jane, Elizabeth, Mary, Kitty, Lydia. Okay. Lydia's the tallest. That's what I was thinking of. This is a fascinating deep dive into this culture. All right, let's read chapter 19. I'm sure there's going to be a post-ball discussion. This is so fascinating. Might be. A lot of interesting theories here. I'm curious to see what I think as the book goes on. Just some strange stuff going on. Chapter 19. The next day opened a new scene at Longbourn. Mr. Collins made his declaration in form. Excuse me? Whoa. Having resolved to do it without loss of time, as his leave of absence extended only to the following Saturday. Having no feelings of diffidence to make it distressing to himself, even at the moment, he set about in a very orderly manner, with all the observances which he supposed a regular part of the business. On finding Mrs. Bennet, Elizabeth, and one of the younger girls together soon after breakfast, he addressed the mother in these words. I don't know if I'm ready for this. I don't know if I'm ready for this, guys. This might be a little wild. Okay, here we go. May I hope, madam, for your interest with your fair daughter, Elizabeth, when I solicit for the honor of a private audience with her in the course of this morning. Before Elizabeth had time for anything but a blush of surprise, Mrs. Bennet instantly answered, Oh dear, yes, certainly. I am sure Lizzie will be very happy. I am sure she will have no objection. Come, Kitty, I want you upstairs. And gathering her work together, she was hastening away when Elizabeth called out, Dear ma'am, do not go. I beg you will not go. Mr. Collins must excuse me. He can have nothing to say to me that anybody need not hear. I am going away myself. As if this girl can't deal with more embarrassment right now. Give her a day off. Man. No, nonsense, Lizzie. I desire you will stay where you are. And upon Elizabeth's seeming really with vexed and embarrassed looks about to escape, she added, Lizzie, I insist upon your staying and hearing Mr. Collins. Elizabeth would not oppose such an injunction, and a moment's consideration, making her also sensible that it would be wisest to get it over as soon as possible and as quietly as possible, she sat down again, and tried to conceal by incessant employment the feelings which were divided between distress and diversion. I cannot believe that the proposal is coming literally the day after. Collins is daft and just dumb. Mrs. Bennet and Kitty walked off, and as soon as they were gone, Mr. Collins began. Believe me, my dear Miss Elizabeth, that your modesty, so far from your doing any disservice, rather adds to your other perfections. You would have been less amiable in my eyes, had there not been this little unwillingness. But allow me to assure you that I have your respected mother's permission for this address. You can hardly doubt the purport of my discourse. However, your natural delicacy may lead you to dissemble. Gosh. Oh, Oh gosh, this is ridiculous. This is absurd. He's so demeaning. Almost as soon as I entered the house, I singled you out as the companion of my future life. That's a lie. That's a flat out lie. But before I am run away with my feelings on this subject, perhaps it will be advisable for me to state my reasons for marrying. Oh gosh, he's going to preach a long sermon on why marriage is beneficial to him. We're going to get like a half a page on the values of marriage. And moreover, for coming into Hertfordshire with the design of selecting a wife, as I certainly did. The idea of Mr. Collins, with all his solemn composure, being run away by his feelings made Elizabeth so near laughing that she could not use the short pause he allowed in any attempt to stop him farther. And he continued, my reasons for marrying are first. Here we go. Here's the long thing. All right, here we go. My reasons for marrying are first, that I think it a right thing for every clergyman in easy circumstances like myself to set out the example of matrimony in his parish. Secondly, that I am convinced it will add very greatly to my happiness. And thirdly, which perhaps I ought to have mentioned earlier, that it is the particular advice and recommendation of the very noble lady whom I have the honor of calling patroness. I hope those aren't his only reasons. Lizzie, I want to get married to you. These are the reasons. Because I think that every clergyman should be married. Number two, I think that I'd be a lot happier. I don't care about you. I think I would be a lot happier if I got married to you. Or just married. No, not even to you. If I just got married in general. And thirdly, I'm doing this for Miss DeBurr. Collins, go marry Miss DeBurr. Twice has she condescended to give me her opinion, unasked too, on this subject. And it was but the very Saturday night before I left Hunsford, between our pools at Quadrille, while Mrs. Jenkinson was arranging Miss DeBurr's footstool, that she said, Mr. Collins, you must marry. And clergymen like you must marry. Choose properly. Choose a gentlewoman for my sake and for your own. Let her be an active, useful sort of person, not brought up high, but able to make a small income go a good way. This is my advice. Find such a woman as you can. Bring her to Hunsford, and I will visit her. Allow me, by the way, to observe, my fair cousin, that I do not reckon the notice and kindness of Lady Catherine de Bourgh among the least of the advantages in my power to offer. You will find her manners beyond anything I can describe. This is crazy. Guys, imagine proposing to someone and not talking about that person and how much you love that person, but imagine talking about how great another person is when you're proposing to someone. This is so bad. You will find her manners beyond anything I can describe, and your wit and vivacity, I think, must be acceptable to her, especially when tempered with the silence and respect which her rank will inevitably excite. Thus much for my general intention in favor of matrimony. It remains to be told why my views were directed to Longbourn instead of my own neighborhood, where I assure you that there are many amiable young women. But the fact is that being, as I am, to inherit this estate after the death of your honored father, who, however, may live many years longer, I could not satisfy myself without resolving to choose a wife from among his daughters, that the loss to them might be as little as possible. When the melancholy event takes place, which, however, as I have already said, may not be for several years, this has been my motive, my fair cousin, and I flatter myself it will not sink me in your esteem. And now nothing remains for me but to assure you that in the most animated language of the violence of my affections. Wait, and now nothing remains for me but to assure you in the most animated language of the violence of my affection. Okay. Not gonna lie, that's kind of a banger line. Everything that he said before that is terrible, but that's kind of a great line. And now nothing remains for me but to assure you in the most animated language of the violence of my affection. That line kind of hits. That's kind of a great line. I mean, violence probably isn't the word that I would really use there. I know he leaves that last, which is probably not the way you should do that. You should definitely say that first. The intensity of my affection, yeah, for sure. But still, violence, intensity, it's kind of a good line. But yeah, if he says that first, then I'm listening to him. I don't want to hear 5 minutes about Mr. Burr and how great Mr. Burr is before you propose. To fortune, I am perfectly indifferent, which is another good one, and shall make no demand on the nature of your father, since I am well aware that it could not be complied with. Honestly, that's good. And that £1,000 in the 4%, which will not be yours till after your mother's decease, is all that you may ever be entitled to. On that head, therefore, I shall be uniformly silent, and you may assure yourself that no ungenerous reproach shall ever pass my lips when we are married. I don't know what to think about that. So, I'll say this. When he goes into that longer, that's when it kind of makes me a little gross. When he first says that first line, he says, to fortune I am perfectly indifferent, and shall make no demand on the nature of your father. That line's great. I'm like, okay, he's actually kind of hitting there. He's like, I don't care about money. He's like, I know you're poor. That doesn't matter to me. But then he rubs it in her face. He rubs the idea of her poverty in her face, and she's like, okay, just chill, just relax. You're not going to be that rich either, dude. So just please. Yeah, honestly, the fact that he talks about this a lot means that he's probably going to, I don't know. I feel like he would honor this, to be honest, but I feel that he would in small, subtle ways, in a passive aggressive way, bring this up in conversation. It was absolutely necessary to interrupt him now. You are too hasty, sure, she cried. You forget that I have made no answer. Let me do without farther loss of time. Accept my thanks for the compliments you are paying me. Gah. I am very sensible of the honor of your proposals, but it is impossible for me to do otherwise than to decline them. I am not now to learn, replied Mr. Collins with a formal wave of his hand, that it is usual with young ladies to reject the interest of a man whom they secretly mean to accept when he first applies for their favor. And that is that sometimes a refusal is repeated, or a second or even third time. I am therefore by no means discouraged by what you have just said. I shall hope to lead you to the altar ere long. That is hilarious. Lizzie, I'm coming back. This is tradition. I'm coming back. Upon my word, sir, cried Elizabeth, your hope is rather an extraordinary one after my declaration. I do assure you that I am not one of those young ladies, if such young ladies there are, who are so daring as to risk their happiness on the chance of being asked a second time. I am perfectly serious in my refusal. You could not make me happy. And I am convinced that I am the last woman in the world who can make you so. Self-aware. Nay, were your friend Lady Catherine to know me, I am persuaded she would find me in every respect ill-qualified for the situation. Were it certain that Lady Catherine would think so, said Mr. Collins gravely. But I cannot imagine that her ladyship would at all disapprove of you. And you may be certain that when I have the honor of seeing her again, I shall speak in the highest terms of your modesty, economy, and other amiable qualifications. Economy, aka you're poor. This is crazy how much he is into Lady Catherine. This is so annoying. Oh, gosh. Like, stop talking about Lady Catherine so much in your proposal of another woman. This is absurd. Indeed, Mr. Collins. All praise of me will be unnecessary. You must give me leave to judge for myself and pay me the compliment of believing what I say. I wish you very happy and very rich. And by refusing your hand, do all in my power to prevent your being otherwise. In making me the offer, you must have satisfied the delicacy of your feelings with regard to my family, and may take possession of Longbourn estate whenever it falls, without any self-reproach. This matter may be considered, therefore, as finally settled. And rising as she thus spoke, she would have quitted the room had not Mr. Collins addressed her. Dang. When I do myself the honor of speaking to you next on this subject, I shall hope to receive a more favorable answer than you have now given me, though I am far from accusing you of cruelty at present. Ah! Wow. He is awful. Because I know it to be the established custom of your sex to reject a man on the first application, and perhaps you even now said as much to encourage my suit would be consistent with the true delicacy of the female character. Ugh. Really, Mr. Collins, cried Elizabeth with some warmth, you puzzle me exceedingly. If what I have hitherto said can appear to you in any form of encouragement, I know not how to express my refusal in such a way as to convince you of its being one. You must give me leave to flatter myself, my dear cousin, that your refusal of my address is merely words, of course. My reason for believing it are barely these. It does not appear to me that my hand is unworthy of your acceptance, or that the establishment I can offer would be any other than highly desirable. My situation in life, my connections with the family of De Burgh, and my relationship to your own are circumstances highly in my favor, and you should take it into farther consideration that in spite of your manifold attractions, it is by no means certain that another offer of marriage may ever be made to you. Wow. Your portion is unhappily so small that it will all in likelihood undo the effects of your loveliness and amiable qualifications. Time out. There's no way that just came out of his mouth. Oh my gosh. So he's worse than I thought. Wow. He's actually a bit more rotten than I initially thought. That video I made a few days ago about the difference between him and Wickham, and maybe Collins is like really harmless underneath. He's not. This is really insidious and pretty disgusting. Like, he was just saying, he's like, don't worry, I won't hold it over your head that you're poor. I'm sorry, but I don't want to marry you. Oh, you're not going to get no one else is going to propose to you because you're so poor. Your poorness is not going to make other people think that you're lovely or amiable. As I must therefore conclude that you were not serious in your rejection of me, I shall choose to attribute it to your wish of increasing my love by suspense, according to the usual practice of elegant females. Dude, he is crazy. Man. I do assure you, sir, that I have no pretension whatever to that kind of elegance which consists in tormenting a respectable man. I would rather be paid the compliment of being believed sincere. I thank you again, and again for the honor you have done me in your proposals, but to accept them is absolutely impossible. My feeling in every respect forbids it. Can I speak plainer? Do not consider me now as an elegant female intending to plague you, but as a rational creature speaking the truth from her heart. You are uniformly charming, cried he, with an air of awkward gallantry, and I am persuaded that when sanctioned by the express authority of both your excellent parents, my proposal will not fail of being accepted. So are we going to have to deal with this agony again of him proposing again? To such perseverance in willful self-deception, Elizabeth would make no reply, and immediately in silence withdrew, determined, if he persisted in considering her repeated refusals as flattering encouragement to her, to apply to her father, whose negative might be uttered in such a manner as to be decisive, and whose behavior at least would not be mistaken for the affection and coquetry of an elegant female. That's interesting. Time for reinforcements, but to be honest, I mean, I think if it was, this is a sad point. I think if it was any of her other daughters beside Elizabeth, I think her dad would be fine with it, because I think her dad is more concerned with his entertainment, and he's like, oh, it'd be so fun to have a guy like this in the house that I could just laugh at all the time. He'd be okay with marrying one of his daughters off, but not Elizabeth. And yeah, I kind of agree with you guys. Like, he's not wrong, but just to say that is just atrocious. Like, I see him saying that, if he's either saying that with derision in his heart, or he's saying that with like a clueless idea that he doesn't understand the social cue of how rude that actually is. You know, that's like, both of those aren't great. I don't think he would force one of his daughters to, I think all of his other daughters would probably laugh at him. Honestly, Collins and Mary wouldn't make the worst combo, to be completely honest. I don't think Mary is necessarily concerned with love. I don't know. He's very haughty. He's lashing out because she hurt his feelings. Yeah, for sure. But that was kind of like my first idea. Like, he's doing this because he's like angry, which is kind of my first reading, which makes him like a severe man. And obviously his character came out in this. That is really interesting. Mary's not concerned with love, but she's surely not concerned with becoming an old maid. Honestly, I think Mary would love becoming an old maid. She would love just playing the piano, but she just wants to be taken care of so that she can play the piano and read all day. So I don't blame her. It's not a bad life. I don't think, yeah, they wouldn't make each other better. Yeah, they probably would just like ignore each other and just, it wouldn't be a marriage for love. It wouldn't be a great marriage, probably. Yeah, honestly. And there's a great amount of character building that comes to that. Knowing self-control, when to keep your tongue locked away. Like everyone has thoughts like that. Like, oh, like she's poor. She might not get married again, but you don't say those things out loud. If someone refuses your proposal, saying those things out loud becomes a cruelty. And it becomes like a meanness because you just look butthurt and you just look like you're repaying their rejection of your proposal with something mean and nasty back to them. Which, we're all human, you know. I think that's like one of the themes of the novel, potentially. I sometimes refrain from blatantly saying people are villains in novels, because I do think everyone is a human and we all make mistakes and, you know, all yada yada yada. But there's a point where you just need to have some kind of understanding of what is right and wrong to say. I don't know. Yeah, for sure. Antagonist is a better term than villain. Yeah, definitely. Collins isn't good at his own feelings, but he's got ideas about how things should be. Yeah, honestly, that's pretty right, I think. Mary could be a decent governess. Their marriage would actually be pretty entertaining, to be completely honest. It'd be entertaining on the page. Maybe not for them, but it'd be entertaining for us. Honestly, that's a good point too, Jan. Well, maybe Mary would accept because someone actually chose her. But I don't think Mary necessarily, I don't know much about Mary, but I don't think she cares that much about that idea of not being chosen. I think that's too much middle child energy portraying here. I think she is just concerned about reading and writing and learning and getting smarter. And maybe she's doing that so that other people will choose her. Maybe she's becoming smarter and a good piano player because she thinks that her older sister is beautiful. She can't beat her in beauty. She can't beat her next oldest sister, Lizzie, in wit, or wit in social convention. And so I think she does this by, she's like, I'm going to get smarter than all of them. Which, honestly, she is smart, but she's not wise. Maybe she is wise. Actually, she's probably a little wise. She just doesn't understand social cues. Maybe a little on the spectrum. Yeah, the only thing that Mary really needs in a marriage, someone's going to propose to her and she's going to go, time out. Do you have a piano? If they say yes, she's like, all right, I'm in. Yeah, she does maybe a little bit of vanity and she shows off her. Yeah, that's a good point. Man, that was a agony of a chapter to read. Collins is a brutal guy. Mean. All right, let's read chapter 20. It's a short one. Honestly, I'm tempted to read 2 more chapters till 22. Hold on one second. Let me take off my watch and charge it. I'm tempted to do 2 more. Anybody got thoughts? I don't know if she has a middle child syndrome. I just don't know enough about her to like confirm or deny that. Like, she plays on the piano a lot. Maybe in some ways. I don't think it's like an overwhelming, resounding fact that she is like a middle child. So I think there's a difference between what Collins is saying and Darcy's saying. I do think that what Darcy did was rude there for sure. But I think there's a difference in the people that they were talking to. To me, Darcy is talking to Bingley, and yes, Elizabeth is overhearing, and he's probably saying things to the point where he might potentially be overhearing things. But it's just like catching up with old friends. You're at a party, you just say something stupid. To me, Collins is saying these things obviously out of foolishness and like dumbness, but he is being a lot, I think, more mean than Darcy was. Like, it's one thing if someone's just like, I'm just not attracted to you, or you're not like attractive enough to tempt me. It's another, like, that's, to me, that's like maybe like more superficial. It's like superficial. Like, it is for sure rude. But, oh no, I still don't think when he's completely ignoring Elizabeth during the visit when Jane's sick, that's like not at all. I don't think that's that rude. Maybe some of you guys might think. I still kind of feel like I don't think that's rude. I think he's doing what he thinks is necessary because I just think both of them don't understand that situation. I think Darcy potentially thinks that Elizabeth might have some feelings for him because I think he's a little dumb. And so what he's doing, I think he's perceiving, I'm not saying I don't think it's a kindness. I think that Darcy perceives that as a kindness to stop talking altogether. So I'm not saying myself that I'm like what Darcy did was kind in that situation. Although if I was in Darcy's position, I probably could understand why I think it's kind. Between rude and being overly proud. Yeah, honestly, I think there is. And Nemo has a great point too. They're both haughty, but they're just haughty in different ways. One, I feel like, has like a rotten core. Like Collins to me has more of a rotten core now from this chapter. And so he's less excusable to me than someone like Darcy, who I just think wants to be alone and like is okay with being isolated and probably is really good at heart, but just says the wrong things. I need to change the exposure on my camera because it looks like I'm a ghost right now. Is that better? Yeah, it's a little better. Yeah, for sure. But I'm saying that I am judging their intentions. I think the intentions of Collins are actually to be nasty in that situation. I think the intention of Darcy in that situation is to actually be true or to actually be kind. Like the intention of their heart is different in those situations. Like I think Collins. So to me, Collins is either doing this for two options. I think he's doing this out of cruelty, and because he's hurt, or because he's just dumb. Darcy's doing that because I think he's trying to be kind. But I don't know. Maybe. I think I just view Darcy as like, I don't think we've had any indication that he's truly like rotten to his core. Everything is just coming through gossip, so I'm just not choosing to believe the gossip. And yeah, for sure, I know like the end of the story a little bit, so it's a little bit different for me. But I think maybe it's just been my reading of Darcy so far, in that I just think he's super introverted. Maybe it's just me importing myself on Darcy a little bit. Like, I feel like he's just super introverted, just wants to read a book, just kind of wants to be left alone. Like, sometimes tries to do things and like has to dig himself out of situations. Like, I still do think what in his mind he thinks he was acting kindly toward Lizzie when he was being silent toward her. But to each their own, different interpretations. That's what we're here for. And I do think that, again, yeah, he was a good friend. He's a good friend to Bingley. Yeah, I'm not trying to prejudge him. And like, I think the same thing is true with Miss Bingley. I think he's not trying to lead people on, which I think is a kindness. I don't think he was trying to be kind to himself. I definitely don't view it as that. Maybe there's a point where he's like, I want to quell my feelings for her, so because she's not in a position. But I actually do think that he was genuinely doing that for Elizabeth. Because I think that he genuinely thinks that maybe Elizabeth has some sort of crush on me. So he's quelling and squashing all the feelings there. And the whole Miss Bingley thing I think is interesting too, because he does that with Miss Bingley. He doesn't really talk to her or engage in conversation with her. He's not leading her on. Even though Miss Bingley is kind of dumb and she still wants to go for him. She's like a fighter. She wants to go. Anyway, let's read the next chapter. We might read 2 more. We'll see. We'll see how fast we read the next chapter. I think this is all really interesting. I like your guys' interpretations of these. I like how we're all just a little different. We all just understand these characters a little bit differently. Yeah, I do think that Darcy is a high-handed and superior. I do definitely think that. I think he has a lot of issues, but and yeah, Fitzluna, that's kind of what I think. I think he's misreading Elizabeth. Headcanon is that Darcy has a good dose of introversion and some awkwardness, but that was beaten out of him by sheer willpower. What do you mean? What do you mean by that? What do you mean? What do you mean? All right, let's go to chapter 20. Let's see what this is about. Mr. Collins was not left to silent contemplation. Mr. Collins was not left long to the silent contemplation of his successful love. For Mrs. Bennet, having dawdled about in the vestibule to watch for the end of the conference, no sooner saw Elizabeth open the door and with quick step pass her toward the staircase than she entered the breakfast room and congratulated both him and herself in warm terms on the happy prospect of their nearer connection. Yikes. Mr. Collins received and returned these felicitations with equal pleasure, and then proceeded to relate the particulars of their interview, with the result of which he trusted he had very reason to be satisfied, since the refusal which his cousin had steadfastly given him would naturally flow from her bashful modesty and the genuine delicacy of her character. This information, however, startled Mrs. Bennet. She would have been glad to be equally satisfied with her daughter, satisfied that her daughter had meant to encourage him by protesting against his proposals, but she dared not believe it and could not help saying so. Interesting that her mom's actually saying so now. But depend upon it, Mr. Collins, she added, that Lizzie shall be brought to reason. I will speak to her about it with myself directly. She is a very headstrong, foolish girl and does not know her own interests, but I will make her know it. Yeesh. All right, chill, Mrs. Bennet. Gosh. Pardon me for interrupting you, madam, cried Mr. Collins. But if she really is headstrong and foolish, I don't know whether she would altogether be a very desirable wife to a man in my situation, who naturally looks for happiness in the marriage state. If therefore she actually persists in rejecting my suit, perhaps it were better not to force her into accepting me, because if liable to such defects of temper, she could not contribute much to my felicity. Everything's about him. This is another reason why I majorly prefer Darcy over Collins is selfishness versus selflessness. Darcy isn't selfless in any way, but he's at least thinking of other people. Mr. Collins is only thinking of himself. That is the only motivation that he has, is for himself and his own happiness. So he's Miss Lady Catherine de Bourgh. Oh, he does think of Miss Lady Catherine de Bourgh. But he's like thinking of her as a way to become happy himself. Mr. Darcy is a good friend. He might not have that many friends, but he's a good friend of Bingley. And he's had a bunch of people trash him, so he probably has lost some friends because some people are on the wrong side. But he at least is like amiable. Yeah, he may be proud, but he isn't conceited. Great way to put it. Love that. Sir, you quite misunderstand me, said Mrs. Bennet, alarmed. Lizzie is only headstrong in matters such as these. In everything else, she is as good-natured as a girl as ever lived. I will go directly to Mr. Bennet, and we shall very soon settle it with her, I am sure. She would not give him time to reply, but hurrying instantly to her husband, called out as she entered the library. Oh, Mr. Bennet, you are wanted immediately, and we are all in an uproar. You must come and make Lizzie marry Mr. Collins, for she vows she will not have him. And if you do not make haste, he will change his mind and not have her. What's he going to say? Mr. Bennet raised his eyes from his book as she entered, and fixed them on her face with a calm unconcern which was not in the least altered by her communication. I have not the pleasure of understanding you, said he, when she had finished her speech. Of what are you talking? Of Mr. Collins and Lizzie. Lizzie declares she will not have Mr. Collins, and Mr. Collins begins to say that she will not have Lizzie. And what am I to do on the occasion? It seems a hopeless business. Interesting. My copy says it seems an hopeless business. Was that older? Because H is kind of close to a vowel, you put an instead of a. It seems an hopeless business. Speak to Lizzie about it yourself. Tell her that you insist upon her marrying him. Let her be called down. She shall hear my opinion. Mrs. Bennet rang the bell, and Miss Elizabeth was summoned to the library. Come here, child, cried her father as she appeared. I have sent for you on an affair of importance. I understand that Mr. Collins has made you an offer of marriage. Is it true? Elizabeth replied that it was. Very well. And this offer of marriage you have refused? I have, sir. Very well. We now come to the point. Your mother insists upon your accepting. Is it not so, Mrs. Bennet? Yes, or I will never see her again. That is awful. Oh, it's British? That's weird. You British people are weird. Oh, because the H gets dropped. It seems an hopeless business. I got to read this in a British accent. Cockney British accent. Yeah. An historian. Interesting. Okay. Mrs. Bennet is terrible. That's such manipulation. I mean, Lizzie probably wouldn't mind that, to be honest. An unhappy alternative is before you, Elizabeth. From this day, you must be a stranger to one of your parents. Your mother will never see you again if you do not marry Mr. Collins, and I will never see you again if you do. That is great. I actually kind of love that. That's a great response. Mr. Collins, I think, is a little bit better than Mrs. Collins. I will say that. Although he kind of checked out. He's just not really involved in their life that much, but that is still kind of lovely. Elizabeth could not but smile at such a conclusion of such a beginning. But Mrs. Bennet, who had persuaded herself that her husband regarded the affair as he wished, was excessively disappointed. What do you mean, Mr. Bennet, by talking this way? You promised me to insist upon her marrying him. My dear, replied her husband, I have two small favors to request. First, that you allow me the free use of my understanding on the present occasion, and secondly, of my room. I shall be glad to have the library to myself as soon as may be. I mean, that's not great. He's like, I don't want to talk about this anymore. Get out of my room. Get out of my room, Mom. He's a little childish at times. But that is a great response. Your mother will never see you again if you do not marry Mr. Collins, and I will never see you again if you do. Not yet, however, in spite of her disappointment in her husband, did Mrs. Bennet give up the point. She talked to Elizabeth again and again, coaxed and threatened her by turns. She endeavored to secure Jane in her interest, but Jane, with all possible mildness, declined interfering. I love Jane! And Elizabeth, sometimes with real earnestness and sometimes with playful gaiety, replied to her attacks. Though her manner varied, however, her determination never did. Mr. Collins, meanwhile, was meditating in solitude on what had passed. He thought too well of himself. That's all the line that we need. He thought too well of himself to comprehend on what motive his cousin could refuse him. And though his pride was hurt, he suffered in no other way. His regard for her was quite imaginary, and the possibility of her deserving her mother's reproach prevented his feeling any regret. While the family were in this confusion, Charlotte Lucas came to spend the day with them. She was met in the vestibule by Lydia, who, flying to her, cried in half a whisper, "I am glad you are come, for there is such fun here. What do you think has happened this morning? Mr. Collins has made an offer to Lizzie, and she will not have him." Charlotte had hardly imagine walking in the door and one of the sisters comes up to you and just starts giving you this gossip. You're like, hold on, he proposed? You're like just shocked. Charlotte had hardly time to answer before they were joined by Kitty, who came to tell the same news, and no sooner had they entered the breakfast room where Mrs. Bennet was alone than she likewise began on the subject, calling on Miss Lucas for her compassion, and entreating her to persuade her friend Lizzie to comply with the wishes of all her family. "Pray do, my dear Miss Lucas," she added in a melancholy tone, "for nobody is on my side. Nobody takes part with me. I am cruelly used. Nobody feels for my poor nerves." Gosh, can't stand her. She's awful. Ugh. Charlotte's reply was spared by the entrance of Jane and Elizabeth. "Hey, there she comes," continued Mrs. Bennet, looking as unconcerned as may be, "and caring no more for us than if we were at York, provided she can have her own way. But I tell you what, Miss Lizzie, if you take it into your head to go on refusing every offer of marriage in this way, you will never get a husband at all. And I am sure I do not know who is to maintain you when your father is dead. I shall not be able to keep you, and so I warn you, I have not done with you from this very day. I told you in the library, you know, that I should never speak to you again, and you will find me as good as my word. I have no pleasure in talking to undutiful children. Not that I have much pleasure in indeed talking to anybody. People who suffer as I do from nervous complaints can have no great inclination for talking. Nobody can tell what I suffer. But it is always so. Those who do not complain are never pitied." Gosh, she is just so annoying. Can someone just... What the heck? She's such a little, like, manipulative. I love how this sentence is structured, or this paragraph is structured too, because it's all like M dashes. It's like periods and M dashes, and then periods right before M dashes. So it's like she's just making asides to herself the entire thing. Those who do not complain are never pitied. Her worldview is bizarre. I do like that too. Oh, how I hate talking to people. This is crazy. She's out of her mind. Her daughters listened in silence to this effusion, sensible that any attempt to reason with or soothe her would only increase the irritation. She talked on, therefore, without interruption from any of them, till they were joined by Mr. Collins, who entered with an air more stately than usual. And on perceiving whom, she said to the girls, "Now I do insist upon it that you, of all you, hold your tongues, and let Mr. Collins and me have a little conversation together." Elizabeth passed quietly out of the room. Jane and Kitty followed, but Lydia stood her ground, determined to hear all she could, and Charlotte, detained first by the civility of Mr. Collins, whose inquiries after herself and all her family were very minute, and then by a little curiosity, satisfied herself with walking to the window and pretending not to hear. In a doleful voice, Mrs. Bennet thus began the projected conversation. "Oh, Mr. Collins." "My dear madam," replied he, "let us be silent. Let us be forever silent on this point. Far be it from me," he presently continued in a voice that marked his displeasure, "to resent the behavior of your daughter. Resignation to inevitable evils is the duty of us all." Honestly, that's kind of a banger line too. Resignation to inevitable evils is the duty of us all. Every once in a while, this dude comes up with an absolute banger of a line. What a good line. "The peculiar duty of a young man who has been so fortunate as I have been in my early preferment. And I trust I am resigned. Perhaps not the less so from feeling a doubt of my positive happiness, had my fair cousin honored me with her hand, for I have often observed that resignation is never so perfect as when the blessing denied begins to lose somewhat of its value in our estimation. You will not, I hope, consider me as showing any disrespect to your family, my dear madam, by thus withdrawing my pretensions to your daughter's favor, without having paid yourself and Mr. Bennet the compliment of requesting you to impose your authority in my behalf. My conduct may, I fear, be objectionable, and having accepted my dismission from your daughter's lips instead of your own, but we are all liable to error. Man, I have certainly meant well through the whole affair. My object has been to secure an amiable companion for myself." Like, he just wants a trophy wife that makes him happy. "With due consideration for the advantage of all your family. And if my manner has been at all reprehensible, I here beg to leave to apologize." This freaking guy is just awful. All right, I'm going to do one more chapter because I just want to do one more chapter. We're going to do chapter 21. Maybe. Yeah, it's not that long. Let's do one more, guys. Tolkien Rants, what's up? Let me edit this and change it so it's chat to 18 to 21. Boom. I just feel like I'm in a reading mood right now, and I want to do one more chapter. This is good. This is good stuff. And I feel like it's too much of a cliffhanger. I want to know what goes on. Man, Mrs. Bennet is honestly maybe my least favorite character. I got to rank these characters. Mrs. Bennet is for sure the least right now. I don't know if I don't like... it's like Mrs. Bennet... It's like Mr. Collins and Mr. Bennet are like on the floor together. And then there's like maybe like 50 feet. And then I have Carolyn. Wait till the end? Oh no. Is she going to be more or less insufferable? She's probably going to be more insufferable, to become completely honest. All right, chapter 21. Let's do one more. I might need some water or something. The The discussions of Mr. Collins' offer was now nearly at an end, and Elizabeth had only to suffer from the uncomfortable feelings necessarily attending it, and occasionally from some peevish allusion to her mother. As for the gentleman himself, his feelings were chiefly expressed, not by embarrassment or dejection, or by trying to avoid her, but by stiffness of manner and resentful silence. He scarcely ever spoke to her, and the assiduous attentions which he had been so sensible of himself were transferred for the rest of the day to Miss Lucas, whose civility in listening to him was a seasonable relief to them all, and especially to her friend. Like, his character just keeps on coming up more and more. Like, yes, a rejection of a proposal like that hurts, but to act like this, he's like childish. You know? The morrow produced no abatement of Mr. Bennet's ill humor or ill health. Mr. Collins was also in the same state of angry pride. Elizabeth had hoped that his resentment might shorten his visit, but his plans did not appear in the least affected by it. He was always to have gone on Saturday, and to Saturday he still meant to stay. After breakfast, the girls walked to Meryton to inquire if Mr. Wickham were returned, and to lament over his absence from the Netherfield ball. He joined them on their entering the town and attended to them to their aunt's, where his regret and vexation and the concern of everybody was well talked over. To Elizabeth, however, he voluntarily acknowledged that the necessity of his absence had been self-imposed. I found, said he, as the time drew near, that I had better not meet Mr. Darcy. That to be in the same room, the same party with him for so many hours together might be more than I could bear, and that scenes might arise unpleasant to more than myself. She highly approved his forbearance, and they had leisure for a full discussion of it, and for all the commendation which they civilly bestowed on each other, as Wickham and another officer walked back with them to Longbourn, and during the walk he particularly attended to her. His accompanying them was a double advantage. She felt all the compliment it offered to herself, and it was most acceptable as an occasion of introducing him to her father and mother. Soon after their return, a letter was delivered to Miss Bennet. It came from Netherfield, and it was opened immediately. The envelope contained a sheet of elegant little hot-pressed paper, well covered with a lady's hair, with a lady's flair, flowing hand, and Elizabeth saw her sister's countenance change as she read it. She saw her dwelling intently on some particular passages. Jane recollected herself soon, and putting the letter away, tried to join with her usual cheerfulness in the general conversation. But Elizabeth felt an anxiety on the subject which drew off her attention even from Wickham. And no sooner had he and his companion taken leave than a glance from Jane invited her to follow her upstairs, when they had gained their own room. Jane, taking out the letter, said, "Oh no. What's going to happen?" "This is from Caroline Bingley. What it contains has surprised me a good deal. The whole party have left Netherfield by this time, and are on their way to town, and without any intention of coming back again. You shall hear what she says." They're like, "This town is too embarrassing. We don't want to be in a town with Mrs. Bennet right now. We're out." Poor Jane. She then read the first sentence aloud, which comprised the information of their having just resolved to follow their brother to town directly, and of their meeting to dine that day in Grosvenor Street, where Mr. Hurst had a house. The next was in these words: "I do not pretend to regret anything I shall leave in Hertfordshire, except your society, my dearest friend. But we will hope at some future period to enjoy many returns of the delightful intercourse we have known, and in the meanwhile may lessen the pain of separation by frequent and most unreserved correspondence. I depend on that for you. To these high-flown expressions, Elizabeth listened with the insensibility of distrust. And though the suddenness of their removal surprised her, she saw nothing in it to really lament. It was not to be supposed that their absence from Netherfield would prevent Mr. Bingley being there. And as to the loss of their society, she was persuaded that Jane must soon cease to regard it in the enjoyment of his. It is unlucky, she said after a short pause, that you should not be able to see your friends before they leave the country. But may we not hope that the period of future happens to which Miss Bingley looks forward may arrive earlier than she is aware, and that the delightful intercourse you have known as friends will be renewed with yet greater satisfaction as sisters. Wait, it is unlucky, she said after a short pause, that you should not be able to see your friends before they leave the country, but we may not hope that the period of future happiness to which Miss Bingley looks forward may arrive earlier than she is aware, and that the delightful intercourse you have known as friends will be renewed with yet greater satisfaction as sisters? Mr. Bingley will not be detained in London by them. Caroline decidedly says that none of the party will return in Hertfordshire this winter. I will read it to you. When my brother left us yesterday, he imagined that the business which took him to London might be concluded in 3 or 4 days, but we are as certain as it cannot be so. And at the same time convinced that when Charles gets to town, he will tell you in no hurry to leave it again. We have determined on following him thither, that he may not be obliged to spend his vacant hours in a comfortless hotel. Many of my acquaintances are already there for the winter. I wish I could hear that you, my dearest friend, had any intention of making one in the crowd. But of that I despair. I sincerely hope your Christmas in Hertfordshire may abound in the gaieties which that season generally brings, and that your beaux will be numerous as to prevent your feelings of loss of the 3 of whom we shall deprive you. It is evident by this, added Jane, that he comes back no more than this winter. It is only evident that Miss Bingley does not mean that he should. Why will you think so? It must be his own doing. He is his own master, but you do not know all. I will read you the passage which particularly hurts me. I will have no reserves from you. Mr. Darcy is impatient to see his sister, and to confess the truth, we are scarcely less eager to meet her again. I really do not think Georgiana Darcy has equal for her beauty, elegance, and accomplishments as the affection she inspires in Louisa and myself. It is heightened into something still more interesting from the hope we dare to entertain of her being hereafter our sister. I do not know whether I ever before mentioned to you my feelings on the subject, but I will not leave the country without confiding them, and I trust you will not esteem them unreasonable. My brother admires her greatly already. Ah, he will have frequent opportunity now of seeing her on the most intimate footing. Her relations all wish the connection as much as his own. And his sister's partiality is not misleading me, I think, when I call Charles most capable of engaging any woman's heart. With all these circumstances to favor an attachment and nothing to prevent it, I am wrong, my dearest Jane, in indulging the hope of an event which will secure the happiness of so many. Caroline is nasty. That is just mean. Gosh, come on. My guess is that the sisters and even Darcy at this moment, I'm like, Darcy is probably convincing them all to leave because this is not like a good, place for them to just be. What think you of this sentence, my dear Lizzie? Said Jane as she finished it. Is it not clear enough? Does it not expressly declare that Caroline neither expects nor wishes me to be her sister? That she is perfectly convinced of her brother's indifference, and that if she suspects the nature of my feelings for him, she means most kindly to put me on my guard? Can there be any other opinion on this subject? Yes, there can, for mine is totally different. Will you hear it? Most willingly. You shall have it in few words. Miss Bingley sees that her brother is in love with you and wants him to marry Miss Darcy. She follows him to the town in hopes of keeping him there and tries to persuade you that he does not care about you. Elizabeth is good in this because it's interesting. Everybody is good when they're talking about other people, but not really rational when they're like trying to do their own reasoning. Jane shook her head. Indeed, Jane, you ought to believe me. No one who has ever seen you together can doubt his affection. Miss Bingley, I am sure, cannot. She is such a simpleton. She is not such a simpleton. Could she have seen half as much love in Mr. Darcy for herself, she would have ordered her wedding clothes. But the case is this. We are not rich enough or grand enough for them. And she is the more anxious to get Miss Darcy for her brother, from the notion that when there has been one intermarriage, she may have less trouble in achieving a second, in which there is certainly some ingenuity. And I dare say it would succeed, if Mr. Burr were out of the way. But my dearest Jane, you cannot seriously imagine that because Miss Bingley tells you her brother greatly admires Miss Darcy, he is in the smallest degree less sensible of your merit than when he took leave of you on Tuesday, or that it will be in her power to persuade him that instead of being in love with you, he is very much in love with her friend. If we thought alike of Miss Bingley, replied Jane, your representation of all this might make me quite uneasy, or might make me quite easy, but I know the foundation is unjust. Caroline is incapable of willfully deceiving anyone, and all I can hope in this case is that she is deceived herself. Okay, so this is the sweetness of Jane thinking the best of people. I still put Miss Bennet below Jane, or I still put Miss Bennet below Caroline, but they're maybe on equal footing right now. This is sad. I just feel bad for Jane. She's just so sweet. She doesn't deserve this. Jane is just a sweet person who's caught in the middle of these nasty people. That's sad. Lizzie is so aware about Caroline's shrewdness. Interesting. That's really interesting, actually. They're definitely from different social classes. So I'm sure she's like projecting that on herself even. She's like, oh, we're not good enough for them. Like Jane is so sweet. She's almost like self-deprecating. She's like, oh, like it was too good to be true. Yeah, she's a tiny bit too good believing about people. That's a good way to put it. I just feel so bad for her. This hurts me. That is right. You could not have stated a more happy idea, since you will not take comfort in mine. Believe her to be deceived by all means. You have now done your duty to her and must fret no longer. But my dear sister, can I be happy? Even supposing the best, in accepting a man whose sister and friends are all wishing to marry elsewhere. You must decide for yourself, said Elizabeth, and if upon mature deliberation you find that the misery in disobliging his two sisters is more than equivalent to the happiness of being his wife, I advise you by all means to refuse him. How can you talk so? Said Jane, faintly smiling. You must know that though I should be exceedingly grieved at their disapprobation, I could not hesitate. I did not think that you would. And that being the case, I cannot consider your situation with much compassion. But if he returns no more this winter, my choice will never be required. 1,000 things may arise in 6 months. 6 months, man. The idea of his returning no more, Elizabeth treated with the utmost contempt. It appeared to her merely the suggestion of Caroline's interested wishes, and she could not for a moment suppose that those wishes, however openly or artfully spoken, could influence a young man so totally independent of everyone. She represented to her sister as forcibly as possible what she felt on the subject, and had soon the pleasure of seeing its happy effect. Jane's temper was not desponding, and she was gradually led to hope, though the diffidence of affection sometimes overcame the hope, that Bingley would return to Netherfield and answer every wish of her heart. This chapter is just so sad. They agreed that Mrs. Bennet should only hear of the departure of the family without being alarmed on the score of the gentleman's conduct. But even this partial communication gave her a great deal of concern, and she bewailed it as exceedingly unlucky that the lady should happen to go away, just as they were all getting so intimate together. After lamenting it, however, at some length, she had the consolation of thinking that Mr. Bingley would be soon down again and soon dining at Longbourn, and the conclusion of all was the comfortable declaration that though he had been invited only to a family dinner, she would take care to have 2 full courses. Man, poor Jane. What a sad chapter. Like, again, I think Jane might be my favorite character, so it's just sad that she has to endure this. I wonder if Bingley's gonna like be poisoned in his mind, and like if they're gonna meet again, and he's gonna be exceptionally cold toward her. Like if he's gonna try to do what Darcy did, but like he's doing this under his own guise of, or he's doing this under the idea of like what his sister, his sister and his sisters really want, which is just nasty. And he doesn't want that. Let the man do what he wants. Yeah, Jane of no pride and very little prejudice. It's such a sad chapter. Man. Not prejudging. Yeah. I have so much prejudice in this book about people. In Pride and Prejudice. Oh, man. Not Jane. She's too sweet, and she's too kind, and she's too innocent. Yeah, exactly. Jane does not deserve this. She's like the only pure good person in this book. Other than, Charlotte's great. And good old Mary over there. Just playing her piano. This is a good to be continued chapter. Good. This was a fun reading. I got a lot to talk about these things. Actually, I don't know. Maybe like I'm gonna combine a bunch of things. Man. Sad day. I know, the point of the book, Pride and Prejudice of the Reader. Yeah, protect Jane at all cost. All right, guys. I'm going to go mourn and go lament this. I'm going to go make some videos about this. I don't know when the next live read will be. Probably, I'm hoping Thursday or Friday. Maybe Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. Depends on how many videos that I have for the next one. But it'll be one of those days. Probably around the same time. Jane's rank with Gimli? I think Gimli's still a little higher than Jane. I probably would rank some Lord of the Rings characters a little higher than Jane right now. But I still love Jane. Jane's probably my favorite in this book right now. Jane would be like middle of the pack in the Fellowship. It's a great question, though. Yeah, my love of Carolyn was about, like a page? And then I was like, oh, nope, she's awful. She is terrible. I can't stand her. All right, guys. Well, it was a pleasure. Join me again. I'll try to post them like a little bit in advance, like I did today. Might be like a night in advance for when the live read's going to be. I'll try to post it in the Discord too whenever I know when I'm going to do one. But up until that point, pump out some videos, and then I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a great day, guys. Let's go all mourn Jane today, because sad. I feel bad for her. All right, guys. Have a good one.
I'm 27 years old. I've no money and no prospects. I'm already a burden to my parents. And I'm frightened.